I'm really glad to see everyone, and I'm very glad to be gathering to mark 1 year, or actually a little bit more than 1 year, of 19V. So we announced our working group last March. We launched the seminar series in June, and that means that we've kept 19V going, and it has kept us going through a long year of pandemic, economic, and political upheaval, crisis in higher education, and in the United States, attempts to grapple with the racial injustices that are embedded in virtually all of our institutions, both social and intellectual. And to that point, my own memories of 19V's founding are bound up with the massive protests that filled the streets of New York City after the police murdered George Floyd. So I listened to our first seminar series event. That was the interdisciplinary roundtable, What is the 19th Century? With panelists Alex Martin, Rosalind Blakesley, and Yuba Goldberg. I listened to this roundtable while at literally the same time listening to the crowds outside my window chanting Black Lives Matter. And this experience actually speaks to one of the things I hope 19V can do, and that is to bring the 19th century into conversation with the present moment for our own intellectual benefit as scholars, as well as for the sake of our students and the continuing relevance of our field within the academy, because as we all know, the humanities are becoming more and more marginalized with every passing year. So it's my hope that 19V will continue to be characterized by the following principles: interdisciplinarity, openness, and horizontality. I made those up, but I'm pretty happy with them. You can weigh in. Interdisciplinarity is, I think, self-explanatory. By openness, I mean no gatekeeping, all are welcome. By horizontality, I mean that we try to avoid the markedly hierarchical structures that the academy often tends to reproduce. So for example, in the seminar series, we avoid long introductions listing speakers' affiliations and accomplishments. And I think these principles are especially important in our current moment when it is so difficult for young scholars and even for not so young scholars to find jobs, right? There are plenty of us here without institutional affiliations. Other members who are speaking today will be able to address 19V's other goals and things like connecting scholars across geographic space and national borders and languages, bringing together Russian and Western approaches, which has been really interesting and useful for me, and facilitating the study of artists, writers, and topics that are often deemed kind of too minor to be accommodated in syllabi and small departments. And I say minor very much in quotation marks. And in fact, for me, this last point has been key. The experience of considering a far wider range of texts and objects than I ever did before has proven absolutely transformative. My view of the 19th century literary canon, for instance, is very, very different than it was a year ago. And I'm extremely grateful for that. So my thanks go out to all members of our collective, but especially to Sarah Dickinson, who put an enormous amount of time and thought into organizing the seminar series. Seminar series has turned out to be the indispensable core of what we do. Margaret Shamutu has played a crucial role in the series, both intellectually and organizationally. And those two things go together, really. You can't organize without thinking about what you're organizing, thinking really hard. And a lot of thought has gone into these various pairings. I thank them for their grace in bearing the burdens of intellectual sociability, because that's a labor that too often goes unrecognized in the academy. So I can't wait to hear everybody else's reflections today. I especially look forward to hearing people's ideas for the future of 19V, which will undoubtedly be making adjustments in the coming year as we all return to some version, maybe, of normal academic life. So thank you all so much. And I'm handing it off at this point, Ilya.
Thank you so much, Anne. On the program, we have the reports from the subgroups. And Helen, would you like to start us off?
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Anne and Ilya and Sasha and the Jordan Center for organizing this Jubilee and especially for instigating this whole project. I'm really happy to be able to celebrate this year of this working group. I think I can't really overstate how significant it's been for me personally, as we've been saying, a difficult, isolating, tumultuous year. But thanks to this group, it's been a time of having so many chances to participate in conversations with colleagues and feel a really strong spirit of collaboration and collegiality and simply shared pleasure in literature and scholarly inquiry that's been really productive for my own research and just a bright spot at a difficult time. So I'm here to talk about the Other 19V reading group, which I've been coordinating over the past year. This group meets monthly to discuss a less studied writer of the 19th century. Every meeting is led by a different person. And the idea for the group is that anyone who has a less studied writer that they'd like to talk about with others can propose a meeting on that writer. Expertise on their work is not required, although we've certainly had many incredibly informative and deep presentations on various authors' works. But the core purpose of the group is to be an informal space for exploring unfamiliar texts together, or if you're doing research on a writer that hasn't been written about very much, having the chance to just see what other people think about that writer and the text, what they see in the text. And it's been really productive. We've been doing it for a whole year now. We had our first meeting in May of 2020. And since then, we've discussed, I counted 14 authors, with our 15th coming up tomorrow. We have meetings scheduled through the rest of the year and into 2022. And of the writers we've discussed, just under 50% of them have been women. And I think that points to just how turning attention to less studied writers almost automatically means encountering viewpoints that have been marginalized in the history of the literature of the period. Also, discussing less studied writers actually ends up meaning thinking about what literature people actually read, what was really popular, what genres were popular, looking at examples of texts that might have some relationship with some more famous texts like feuilletons and those kinds of things, and thinking about those genres. And speaking for myself and echoing Anne's comments, really every single one of our meetings in one way or another has changed how I think about the literature of Russian literature in the 19th century. And I think that's not an overstatement. It's really because each meeting presents a kind of whole new way of looking at the literature of the period. So it's been really interesting, a great education. And really, I would just like to thank everyone who has attended the meetings of the past year, and especially all the people who have led the meetings. My plan is to keep this group going indefinitely. I don't think we're going to run out of writers to discuss anytime soon. And I think it will also be interesting to start to go back to some of the writers that we've discussed to discuss others of their works. You know, we certainly haven't exhausted Gleb Uspensky, Pisimsky, Khoshinskaya. Some of these writers are really quite significant. We are going to have a second meeting about Khoshinskaya in the fall. So if you would like to talk about a writer who we've already met to discuss, they're not crossed off the list. We can go back and discuss people again. I hope that we'll start doing more of that. So if you've been thinking about coming to one of these meetings and haven't yet, please do join us. If you have a writer that you would like to discuss, please get in touch with me. Our next meeting is tomorrow. I think I mentioned that. It's tomorrow at noon. Linda Mayhew will lead a discussion of Yelena Apredeva. And you can find the details on the Facebook group or message me and I'll share them with you. And I'm going to put our upcoming schedule into the chat and also the link to the Facebook group. If you aren't on Facebook and you want to hear about these meetings, just send me a message or send me an email. And I send out an email announcing them as well, so I can add you to the email list. So just thank you again to everyone who's participated in this group. It's something that I enjoy so much and have learned so much from, and I just hope that it keeps going and keeps being such a rich and productive space for learning about the 19th century.
Thank you so much, Helen. This is really a fantastic group, and which, has been incredibly productive for me as well. Next, we have David Paulstock.
Hi, thanks. Thank you, Ilya and Sasha, everyone who took part in organizing this greater group, which has been obviously very vital for a lot of people, and especially at a time when, I don't want to echo everything that others have obviously said, right? At a time when our abilities to be together in scholarship have been so limited. I think it's probably a kind of silver lining that we've discovered this way of working together and gotten used to it, because it really does offer many, many options that that maybe we didn't really realize we had before. So the group that working group that I'm involved in was co-founded in the fall by Kirill Osvavat, who's with us today, and Luba Goldberg, and myself. We met for the first time in September after discussing how we wanted to proceed in studying the Lyrica 19V, which is our group. We hit upon what we felt was just an extremely simple formula, which was that we would choose a poem, or at most two, to discuss per session, and that this would be proposed by one member of the group, any member of the group, and that person would briefly present, not in a sort of detailed scholarly analytical way, but by way of introducing for discussion, raising certain issues that the poems themselves raise, and then discuss them. So we just, not too long ago, we had our 14th meeting, and the 15th is scheduled for next week. And we've been meeting, I would say, every 2 to 3 weeks for the most part. And we've covered a range, an interesting range. There isn't anything systematic really about the selection of texts and topics over time. It depends on the group, not really even the group, but just on volunteers, people who want to do it. Sometimes one discussion will lead us to consider in particular, a sort of follow-on topic or poem or author that leads us further in a certain direction that we've found to be productive. I think, I can speak for most of the members of the group, and several of the Stammgäste are here today, including Emily and Jenny, of course, Kirill, Bella, who else here? Anyone else here? I don't see anyone else on my screen anyway, but I think I can speak for most of the people in saying that this has been, the format in particular, I think has been a very kind of low pressure way to engage in one of the activities that fans of the lyric and scholars of the lyric love to engage in, which is extremely close reading with other people who are extremely good at reading closely. But who, of course, also at the same time have very different approaches and perhaps even very different conceptions of what lyric is. A topic that comes up frequently, of course, is this issue. But we don't, we try not to let the theoretical overwhelm the particular, because what turns out to be very fruitful is really just engaging around a short text, which allows us to be exceptionally thorough, if that's the word for it, or at least detailed, text specific, language specific, in ways that we sort of ideally would be doing all the time in our classes, but we perhaps don't have that many opportunities to do this with Russian lyric poems in Russian, which is really, after all, I think what brought most people to that group. So the poets we've looked at have ranged, they're all well-known poets. So unlike Helen's group, right, we're not exactly plumbing the deepest reaches of the unknown 19th century, but rather frequently revisiting and finding surprisingly new and fresh insights into a wide range of poets from I guess you would call it the long 19th century. So Fiet has been a featured poet, Nekrasov, Zhukovsky, Tyutchev, I mean, the expected people. No Pushkin so far. I think there's a kind of taboo against Pushkin. We did ultimately break down and do Lermontov, but we have also done poets who probably don't get read as much in sort of the mainstream understanding of Russian 19th century Russian poetry, such as Becker and Aninsky, of course, that's not really true of Aninsky, but Grigoriev. So a fairly rich. Did I mention Nekrasov? Did I not mention Nekrasov? I might have sort of done that thing where I mentally mentioned Nekrasov, but I didn't say it out loud. Yes, in fact, Nekrasov has been an important poet for our study because in many ways Nekrasov is a challenge to what one might consider the dominant, primarily, I guess I would say, romantic notion of lyric poetry. So Nekrasov has been of special interest, and there's also a group, a kind of subgroup that has been spawned. So I guess it's a subgroup that is working particularly on some early Nekrasov for the purposes of producing a cluster for publication that would probably also include one or more translations into English, perhaps with some commentary to the issues of translation. Yes, as Kirill says, lots of Nekrasov. So I apologize if my presentation is a little distracted. I recently broke a bunch of ribs, so I'm kind of yeah, I may end up leaving a little early too. So, but this scene behind me was the scene, the Eden that preceded the fall that resulted in the breaking of the ribs. Yeah, it gets getting better all the time. I'm not trolling for pity here. I'm just trying to perhaps explain why I'm not as sharp as I might otherwise be. But this has been, it's just been so much fun, and it's been really just, in the beginning, I think we were surprised that we could talk for an hour and a half on one short poem. I mean, why would we be surprised? We shouldn't be surprised, right? We could all do this probably solo in a monologue. But that, we an hour and a half in, and we would be, we'd be stopping, but not because we ran out of gas, just because it seemed unreasonable to consume any more time. And the conversation has been so rich and varied. And again, I think I speak for everyone when I've really appreciated the very different kinds of methodological, theoretical, and I guess thematic, I would say, approaches and foci of the various members. It's been terrific. It's been terrific to see and get to talk to more frequently than perhaps ever many colleagues in the field who are, like myself, students of the lyric. So thanks for the opportunity to report on this. Thanks for being the parent organization. I'm not sure. I guess that's not very horizontal. Whatever, the primary rhizomatic nexus that has allowed for our group to first of all have the idea to get together and to flourish. I certainly hope that the main group seminars will also consider including more lyric in that program. So thanks a lot. It's so nice to see all of you too.
Thank you, David, very much. Next in line, we have Jennifer Flaherty. Jenny, I will ask you to unmute.
Great. Hi everyone. So I organized the early Turgenev group in the fall, and it was I'm really grateful for this opportunity because I really enjoyed going back to thinking about it, and it was a really wonderful group, part of this wonderful initiative. So in the early Turgenev group, we read during the fall semester 6 works by Turgenev written between 1844, so his very first work ever, and ending in 1852. The idea being that, it was a sort of less explored area up to Zapiski Ochotnika, the more familiar work. So most of these works, many of us had never read before, including a short story with an anti-hero worse than Pechorin, and a strange epistolary novella that Turgenev worked on for 10 years. So in our group, there were 19th centuryists, modernists, and Shankar Sayanath, our resident political scientist with a love for Turgenev. So I don't think Shankar is here, but shout out to him. We'd begin each session with my distillation of the commentary from the PSS in case others didn't have time to read it, and a few possible directions for discussion. Discussion was always lively, and over the course of sessions, we developed some consistent themes, including the many triangulating mediations that preoccupied Turgenev. We were particularly interested in Turgenev's artistic development and discerned the effects of his work in drama on the story Zatishya, for example, and traced his use of discourses on romantic poetry and philosophy. So in this early period, it was fascinating to see where and how he was developing his narrative strategies. A couple of other memories. Valeria Sobol once recited for us during a discussion Pushkin's Anchar, which features centrally in one story. And all of us once play acted sections from Kamny Gost, which featured in another story, and whose recitation, I recall, was both very funny and very illuminating. So Kate Holland, I think, who is here, I remember your renditions in particular. So that was a great moment. For me, getting together to demystify a body of work that I'd never thought I'd read alone, and doing so with a wonderful group of scholars was emboldening for my own research, in which I, of course, like many of us, try to tackle mystifying terrains like the early Turgenev, and which are adjacent to or naggingly of interest to my major texts or topics. But with the group, or alone rather, I do this with far less discipline and collective joy. So the group also broadened my view of teaching, which is one thing that I've been thinking about a great deal, insofar as it seemed to me that we were bearing witness to how each of us move through a text in ways that might be similar to how we do so in the classroom. In myself, the major difference I saw between the group and a typical class of mine was the sort of still focused but ease or freedom that I allowed myself. And I tried to take that back into my teaching after the group. The group was also a good reminder to me that the kernel of future work, essays, or even books can come up in a flash during an engaged discussion. And having these sorts of discussions kept me on my toes, I think, while writing, and also gave me a real audience to motivate that writing. I've been thinking of how to carry all this over into combined writing and reading groups, where arguments that begin to cohere across sessions, as I think they really did in our Turgenev group, might solidify themselves and be themselves subjects for discussion, be it in informal forums or sort of culminating panels at the end of groups or something else. Thank you again for the opportunity to reflect on the Turgenev group, which was in the fall. It didn't carry over into the spring, but I did want to say, Helen, so Helen had the idea to have a new group on populism, so reading some texts of a theoretical nature, so critics from Chernyshevsky to Lavrov to Mikhailovsky to Kachov, beginning this summer. We were looking at beginning this on June 14th. So look out for an email from us, and we'll just be polling when a good day and time will be, but hoping to start that in 2 weeks. So to continue on these groups, which, as I've mentioned, have in many ways been very beneficial for me, in addition to being just purely enjoyable. So thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you very much. And really looking forward to the populism group. That's going to be fantastic. Next, we have Molly Brunson. Molly, I will ask you to unmute.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you all virtually. Ilya, you don't seem to be visibly disintegrating, so I urge you to take another shot so we can all watch. It's great to see everybody. This has been really a distinct pleasure, as I'm sure we all can agree during this past year. Really very much a lifeline. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the 19V Art History Seminar, which may come as a surprise to many of you. And this is because we did something that is in fact against the very mission of the group, which was we kept it closed last summer. And we kept it closed only because we were trying to figure out what the format was going to be and what was going to work. But I wanted to talk about it today because we decided after a hiatus that it is in our best interest and everybody's best interest, really, and pleasure to open up the group because we finally figured out how to do it. So let me tell you a little bit about how it came about and what we were up to. It really emerged in a sort of distinctly personal way, which was, once 19V was launched a year ago, I remember sitting here in front of my computer at the launch event and sort of scrolling through the pages and seeing everybody that I had so profoundly missed for those 3 months. It felt like forever then. A year later, of course, it feels even more so. And I realized that I had missed all of my friends and colleagues, the people I see at conferences, who I can catch in a hotel lobby, who I can catch after a talk, who I can and sort of ask if I can pick their brain about something for a few minutes in those stolen moments that we all appreciate so much. And so I reached out to a few art history friends and said, what about a kind of informal version of what 19V is doing? Can we all get together on Zoom and maybe really propose a topic on something that we've just started working on, that we feel kind of insecure about, but we want to pick one another's brains on this object or this text or this topic. And also really just hang out, every few weeks on Zoom, because I and everybody else was in desperate need of this at the time, and in fact remain so. There was enthusiasm about this. And again, at the beginning, I said, let's keep it small, 10 to 12. I really want to encourage, a loose conversation. In some sense, I want to encourage an atmosphere where it's a kind of safe space for saying outrageous things, risky things, going out on a limb, but also having a little bit of fun. And that is largely what ended up happening. We had 4 meetings last summer. I presented, Margaret Shamu presented, Maria Tarutina presented, and Nikita Balagurov presented. So about once a month last summer. In the initial sort of email to everybody, I said, look, here are the rules of the game. The rules of the game are we share no more than 5 images, and preferably much fewer, 1 or 2 that we'll focus on, 50 to 100 pages of reading from various sources that can help ground us all. And that we treat these 90-minute sessions like the very best graduate seminars we've all been in, by which I meant, let's use this as an opportunity to come to the classroom or come back to the classroom in some instances, to learn from one another, but also to feel comfortable brainstorming and sort of saying things that maybe we wouldn't say at a conference or at a Q&A of a conference panel or something of this kind. Really saying things that come from a spur of the moment sort of collective discussion, and also that we are comfortable having fun. that we can have a sense of humor. We had one sort of very lengthy discussion about what kind of bird appeared in a painting, where we all learned more about this very specific kind of bird than I think we had ever imagined. That we feel comfortable just sort of veering off of discussion and talking about what's going on in our lives, or sort of what experiences we've had in various academic events or in our own circles. And so it really worked, I think, both from a social and an intellectual point of view. And, you know, despite the lab's supposed official academic atmosphere, I found our conversations to be intensely generative. We really did, at the end of the day, end up creating knowledge in those 90-minute sessions. And I found it refreshing and exciting. And again, like an opportunity to almost sort of return to a kind of sort of energy and excitement and also levity that I remember experiencing in the best graduate student conversations I ever had. So that was what was most exciting about these meetings. The other thing I wanted to emphasize in sort of framing this around, you know, like the best grad seminar you've ever taken, is that we also all remember that you don't always do the readings for the grad seminars. I mean, this is, right, the open secret. And so I wanted to give everybody permission to come unprepared to these sessions, and to be okay with that, that even if you were unprepared, there was something about the energy and excitement of these sessions and the discussions that would still allow everybody to participate and communicate. I didn't want anybody to feel like they couldn't attend or they couldn't say something because they hadn't done the reading or didn't know anything about the topic. It turns out, and you know, this is something that art historians know, and it's something that we wanted to really emphasize, that if you're sitting in front of an image and really carefully and seriously looking at it, there's always something new to find and something to say, that you don't always need to know everything about the image, the artist, all of the readings assigned, that in fact your powers of observation are incredibly important. And this is one aspect of the group that we really wanted to emphasize, was a kind of return to this most basic method, but most important method of art historical research, which is close, slow looking. And if we were all doing that together in a collective, there was the hope that we could in fact produce new observations and new things to say and new lines of inquiry. And again, I think we did, even beyond the zoological in that one instance. You know, we had plenty to say. Let's see, what else did I want to mention? I would add the other sort of imperative behind forming, you know, sort of taking close looking as the primary method of these sessions, was that, you know, much like Helen just mentioned, much like Jenny just mentioned as well, you know, there's something about these texts or these images that are like these minor texts in the Russian literary tradition, which is to say that 19th century Russian visual art often does get overlooked. It often does get sort of lost amidst the sort of Tolstoyevsky giants. And sort of put into a secondary place. It often gets overlooked in relation to the giants of, say, French 19th century painting. You know, we're very comfortable close looking at a Courbet or a Manet, but a Kramskoy, not so much. It's not sort of deemed as aesthetically masterful and important, as worthy of that kind of sustained looking and attention. And so I think our decision to really dedicate each of these 90-minute sessions to a few images was also an argument for the worthiness of this field of ours. And I think that this is something that this group 19V is doing phenomenally, which is really arguing for the worthiness of our interdisciplinary community within our broader disciplinary spheres, whatever those happen to be, whether that's Slavic or art history or poli-sci or whatever. It's making a claim for us that I think, you know, used to be almost sort of immediately accepted, right? I mean, nobody ever questioned why somebody would read Tolstoy. But I think has been lost over time. And in certainly the non-literary disciplines, it has always been something of a fight to claim space for Russia within these disciplines. Again, beyond, I'm seeing David Palistock mentioned also in the shadows of Russian modernism, right? I mean, 19th century Russian art has always been in the shadows of the avant-garde and of modernism. And so to make this claim for it, I think is one of the other big projects of the group. I'm going to put the link in here of some of the images we looked at so you can get a sense of, again, the kind of minor works we were looking at. I mean, we were looking at minor works, not always minor artists, but works that often don't get attention. And I'll use that also as the sort of final point I'd like to make, which is that, you know, we had our 4 meetings last summer. We took a hiatus because everybody, you know, was then forced to learn how to teach online and do various things over the fall semester. And it got to be rather overwhelming to add yet another online responsibility. So we agreed to press pause on the group. But I'm very, very happy to report that there has been a clamoring to restart the group, which we're going to do. And we're going to sort of do what we probably should have done from the beginning if we hadn't been nervous about how this would all go. And that is sort of open the group up to everybody. Please come. The new organizers for the second iteration of this group will be Margaret Shamu and Nikita Balagurov. They're both here on the call. I see them. You'll be getting an announcement about this. It should also be up on the 19V website as well. But the next meeting will be June 15th, which is just shy of 2 weeks from now. In the next meeting, the topic will be a conference that just took place, an online conference that just took place at the Tretyakov Gallery on the Piridvishniki. Several of us presented at the conference. It was incredibly interesting, both in terms of content, the content of the actual papers, and also what it revealed about the sort of landscape of Russian art historical studies in Russia and in America primarily, but also America and Europe in the current moment. So we'll be talking about that. Some of the talks will be uploaded and available to watch on the Tretyakov website. So those materials will be sent out with the announcement about the next session. We will also at that session talk about what's next for the group. So if you're interested, please do come, because that will be a moment where the sort of next steps for that group really get mapped out for the sort of coming months. Margaret has posted the Gmail address for the group in the chat. So please do reach out if you have any questions. I would say one last thing, and this is as a point of thanks to Anne and Sarah and really everybody who's played a role in bringing this group together, is that, you know, the sort of the thing that the art history group did for me, but also all of the 19V events have done is sort of not only allow us the space to really make an argument for our fields and our subfields, but also was a sort of a rare point of intellectual joy in my life over the past year. And I would say that, yes, it was the you know, that thing that we all needed during the pandemic year, but I'll be totally honest and tell you that I think it would have felt that way even without the pandemic, that there was an opportunity for coming together with friends and colleagues and people with shared interests and having a sense of renewed excitement and, again, joy in what it is we do. And I really wanted to thank the organizers, but also everybody who's come to these events for that, because it has been, you know, sort of truly special. And I think that we're doing something that was both desperately needed, but also exceedingly rare, despite our, you know, the possibilities for connection in today's world. This kind of thing just wasn't happening at the moment. So many, many thanks for that. So final plug, please do come to the group. We're really excited about the next iteration. And you don't always have to do the homework. So that's a plus for you. Also, there's like, you don't have to do the reading. So if you go to the minor writers group, you have to do the reading, right? For us, you don't. Just look at the images and come to our group. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thanks very much, Molly. So we're now moving on to the second section of the meeting, and this is the so-called perspectives section, and we will lead off with Alexei Vdovin.
Yes, thank you very much, Ilya. Hello, everyone. Once again, thank you very much. It's a privilege to be the first in this section, I would say, and I will try to express some thoughts and suggestions, maybe ideas about how it looks like from Russia to be the part of this group. And I would like to start with, of course, with words of gratitude to all of organizers, and it's really, in my opinion, a great and unique initiative combining the burning research issues with new online tools, and I want to underline tools combining freely and from below, as Anne already said when she was saying about horizontal level acts of our group, and combining not from above, because we know that, for example, in many Russian universities now, and for instance, at High School of Economics, where I'm teaching, almost all online initiatives are compulsory for us now. So we must do it, although without any exceptions, I would say. So this is crucial, this horizontal and open structure, this initiative. Second point I wanted to say is, of course, as everyone already said, intellectual joy and fruitfulness of combination of various subfields and interdisciplinary fields in our 19V. I mean, art history, intellectual history, social history. We followed almost every line and subfield during this year in our series. And third point, and it's a kind of our honor that we launched following this initiative. We launched at least 2 online seminars like 19V at High School of Economics. The first one is the Russian novel. The second one is seminar on translation studies and canon formation. And I don't know what's next, but maybe next year we will plan to do one. And now I'd like to turn to some suggestions and crucial, very important points I'd like to share. I think that if we are thinking about what's next, what is the purpose and meaning of our initiative for the future years, I would think of 2 interwoven levels: institutional framework, let's put it this way, and research, scientific. So as for institutional perspective, I would say that as seen from Russia, these years and the future years will be, I think, very hard, because now we are facing a kind of humanitarian catastrophe. I mean, the political relations between Russia and the US, and it means that, for example, from the middle of May, American embassy stopped issuing any kind of visas for Russians. And for example, so participants of ESIS, ETSIL, and any other real offline events who don't have visas cannot now cannot subscribe for interviews to the embassy and so on. So in this framework, in this context, I think these online seminars, the more the better, will be, of course, the real remedy for us to be involved in the field physically. It's kind of a paradox, but they have no other physical way to be in this movement. And of course, not to mention the COVID restrictions coinciding with all this stuff. Next point is a bit more positive, of course, because I think as the representative of Russia, I plan to somehow to involve more Russian scholars from various universities to our group, and maybe it's worth more intensely advertising our working group. But at the same time, we are sharing on Facebook, and everyone who is there can see and join us. And my last points concern openness and expanding the initiative. And I will be happy if we can cover more subfields inside the 19V. For example, history of knowledge, history of science, history of ideas, more in several variants, for example, and so on. And as for geographical expansion, I would be also happy to see colleagues and scholars and presenters and speakers from South America, from Japan, from China, from Eastern and other parts of Europe, of course, Scandinavia, for example, because I think some parts of the world are underrepresented in our group. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexei, so much for your suggestions and comments. Next, we have Riva Yevstefeeva.
Like after the very serious and an important speech of Alexei Vdovin, I hope I will not sound too stupid, because I just promised Anne that I will be happy to share my enthusiasm about the group, but I don't have serious proposals or serious considerations. So I came here just to thank all of you for the organization of this wonderful group, and just to tell how wonderful it was for me. Because 1 year ago, when the 19V project started, I found myself locked down in a country that I hardly knew. It was a new country for me. I arrived in France, and I still didn't have lots of contacts here, because it was like here in France, the lockdown came right after a strike that a long few months. So really, it was an exceptional situation that was succeeded by another exceptional situation. So in this context, for me, it was really a wonderful opportunity to these Zoom seminars. First, I joined the Zoom seminars on 18th century field from Russia, and then I was really happy that the 19V project arrived in all its variety with all its sub-projects. And I also want to say special thanks to Sarah Dickinson, who involved me in all this, who shared the information with me, who invited me, and who is one of the people who are among the organizers. And this experience became for me, I would say, even life-changing, because it suddenly opened to me a window to a reality that I knew even less, because I've never been to the United States. I knew very few of my American US colleagues. So this was for me really a huge opportunity that otherwise I don't know when I would have arrived to that. And it was very interesting for me also to see a new type of approach to academic studies, and also to how an academic discussion can be like organized, because I came from my Russian and Italian experience. I was in the middle of my French experience, but here I found myself with lots of the colleagues from the United States, and it was really, I amused a lot to see how different it was. Again, this new model, this model that was new for me, very interesting. I was also very happy to meet lots of new people, and also like new friends, but also old friends. I was happy to meet here suddenly people that I knew in my previous lives, in my previous careers. I even met once my ex-academic advisor here in one of the seminars. It was really nice. And I appreciated a lot, especially the small group discussions, because I found that there was a lot of exchange there, a very informal atmosphere where everyone could express his thoughts about what was the object of the discussion, and it was really a good exchange, and I learned a lot personally. And I learned a lot about new writers, or some new texts of the writers that I already knew. In fact, I wanted to say that I enjoyed a lot the homeworks. I did the homeworks normally, and it was like part of my, how can I say, it was really a year in which I learned really a lot. And lots of the things that I knew, I actually could propose to my students, my private students, or in more formal courses. So I really hope that it will go on, because I still have lots to learn. And the 19V discussion groups are really helping with that. So I hope it won't end. Also because personally, I will continue to travel through the world. Today I got the news about the next position that I will get for the next couple of years. I don't want to talk about that, because it's not 100% sure, but mostly sure. So the things that is sure, that I will continue to travel, like my path is not finished in Paris. And it's not only me who is traveling a lot. I think that my generation of researchers and the next generations, we travel more and more, and there is more and more exchange. And I think that maybe we can speak about the new République de Lettres that can be built if the connections will be really strong. So 19V was one of the best virtual rooms for to meet the colleagues from in other parts of the world. As I've said before, both the new colleagues and the people that maybe you only know by their works, by the articles, or the people that you've never heard about before, but you discover that they are really interesting and their topics are really interesting to you. And also to meet old friends from all over the world. It's also great. And the last idea is that the thought that I was thinking through this whole year is that the situation in which we met, me and in which I met most of the people of this group, was really tragic. But this was a really big gift, and I often ask myself, should we thank the pandemic for that? It's a paradox, but sometimes I really thought, like, thanks God we had a pandemic. No, I can say that, but it was easy to arrive to this kind of idea. So I think that we have a really big, important thing to celebrate today. I'm really happy that you arrived to this 1 year anniversary, and I really hope that there will be many more. And the last thing that I wanted to say, that I would really love to meet you in person, most of you. I hope this day will come. So thank you again.
Thank you, Riva, so much. Okay, next we have Allison Lee. I'm going to unmute.
All right, I think I got it. Well, thank you so much for asking me to speak. I feel, that I just want to echo so many of the other sentiments that have been expressed in terms of what a wonderful experience both the seminar series of 19V and in particular the art history subgroup was for me as a participant in that. So I prepared just a kind of, outline of notes to speak to both the seminar and the subgroup. So in preparing, for today and our Jubilee, I looked back through the long list of all of the talks that were given as part of the 19V seminar series and kind of pulled out the ones that I attended and got out my notes and things from them. And I just want to start by almost shouting out, the extraordinary work that was done for a moment. I was able to hear Shaban Hurd on prostitution in the late Russian Empire, Margarita Weissman on Nadezhda Durova, Alexander Alexandrov, Vadim Schneider on capitalist realism. And then I managed to attend all of the ones by art historians, most of whom I know and a few who I didn't. So Wendy Salmond, who I see is here today on the Faceted Chamber, Margaret Shamu's talk on images of female beauty in Russia, Zhura Kasimova on Igor Savitsky's very unusual collection, and Maria Tarutina on Vasily Polyanov and Ilya Repin. And I will speak too a little bit, I guess, to the fact that I too gave one of the first seminar presentations, a chapter from my book on Alexander Ivanov and his very unusual works from the 1830s and 1840s. In my humble opinion, everything that I heard was just extraordinary, was just really wonderful scholarship. And I think there were several things about the format of the seminars that I hope continue. First and foremost, just the diversity of disciplines that is represented by the 19V group. I felt myself definitely growing, not only as an art historian from hearing the research of various sectors within that particular field, but growing very much in terms of my understanding of literature and gender studies within the larger field of Russian 19th century, just ideas that hadn't occurred to me before came very much to the fore. And I think what Anne said at the very beginning in terms of this being about bringing the 19th century into the present moment, I found that to be so true in every seminar talk that I heard, where this sense of relevance was really there. It was obviously important to every scholar who spoke. The 19th century did not feel dry and distant and dusty. It felt right here with us in so many ways. One of the other things I really loved about was their great length. I appreciated as a speaker having the 30-35 minutes in which to unfold my research project. So often 15-20 minute conference presentations, it's certainly doable, but I find 30-35 minutes so luxurious. So I hope as we continue in future months and hopefully years, that stays, as well as the discussant format. The Sobеседник, I thought, was a really excellent way to cap each presentation, to begin guiding the discussion. And I adored the very long format discussion after each talk. As exhausting as I found it myself personally, I grew so much from having a really long time in which people could ask questions in the chat, unmute themselves, have them read by Sasha. That I think was so generative in a really positive way too. I really want to reiterate maybe a little bit what Alexei was speaking to, in hoping that we keep the virtual format of 19V. I'm sure that's something that's being discussed. And I know when I lived in New York, I got over to the Jordan Center as often as I could for talks. but being able to log in and sometimes keep my video off and be eating lunch or doing various things while listening meant that I could attend, and I'm sure others experience this too, so much more than I would have been able to otherwise. So I also hope you continue posting the recordings on YouTube. I know that I haven't been able to catch every talk that I necessarily wanted to, and have indeed gone and watched some afterwards. As wonderful as it is to be a part of the discussion, I was glad that those were there, and I hope scholars continue to agree to have the recordings made and posted, because that is such a vital thing, I think, for all of us. To speak very briefly to the subgroup, I just want to echo everything that Molly said. It truly did feel like those great seminars from graduate school, the best ones. I even felt myself getting nervous, wanting to make extra good contributions and not say anything, I don't know, dumb. But this idea of looking and the freedom of being able to come very well prepared some months and not so well prepared in terms of the readings and things others. Our subgroup, I think, is wonderful, and I'm excited that we're opening it up, as much as that may change the tenor of it a little bit. I'll echo what Helen said too about her group, in that I don't think we'll ever run out of artists and art history topics to talk about, just like they'll never run out of writers that they want to talk about. I see the potential of our subgroup as endless, and one that really was centered around the kind of intellectual sociability that Anne mentioned at the very beginning. It certainly was a lifeline for me as someone in the Deep South who does not have colleagues. There's no Russian or Slavic department at my university. I can't help but think that if I was a graduate student or an independent scholar, this 19V would just be my absolute lifeline. And the sense of joy that each session brought me, whether it was attending a seminar on something I didn't know anything about, or being a part of the 19V art history subgroup, I left every single time feeling so inspired about the field that I'm a part of and the potential for research going forward. So those are my thoughts. I hope that they're helpful, and I'll hand it back to Ilya.
Thanks a lot, Allison. Yeah, super encouraging. Okay, next we have Christy Monet. Christy, there you are. Okay.
Hello. I don't really, I think like Riva, like I don't have anything sort of long form or profound or anything sort of planned. I'm actually in transit right now. My partner and I are looking to buy a house, so we have things scheduled and everything's quite hectic, but I wanted to make time to sort of just share gratitude to this community, to this format, and to thank the organizers of 19V, obviously, but really everyone who participated, because, you know, as Allison said, I am a graduate student, late stage in last year of dissertation writing, starting in September. And this has been really a lifeline for me. My university has a very small Slavic department to begin with. And I'm also not, Slavic is my second home. Political scientist, that's my first home. So this has just been kind of incredible, seeing so much work on the 19th century being done from so many different interdisciplinary perspectives, especially as I think, I guess as a political scientist, I almost never see, I mean, it's hard to find political scientists working on things outside the Soviet period. So it was really just enriching and fulfilling to sort of dive into this community here. I will also echo Allison in that, I mean, I adore the seminar series setup, the long form setup, the discussant, all of those things. For my part, I wouldn't change a thing about that. It was incredible to just have the sort of the time and space to sit down for, you know, an hour and a half, 2 hours of your day, and just take all of that in. I think the subgroups and the close reading there are invaluable, and my only wish there is that there's just more of them. So I mean, that's I only got to participate briefly in the Turgenev subgroup, which was excellent. And somewhat of a busy year, but I'm hoping if the subgroups continue that that's something that I would have the time to participate more in the coming year. And I suppose really just if there is anything else, I think it would be something that Alexi said about kind of, I guess, diversifying the range of scholars geographically that we have in the group. That would be great. I mean, I think as Alexi said, I think there are probably scholars all over the place, and even, you know, even within Russia, to diversify around that large space as well, central, sort of closer to Siberia, around Central Asia, the Far East, but all over the place, you know, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America. I know there are scholars who have things to say on 19th century Russia, so that would be great to see in the group. I mean, that's really all that I have. I just wanted to thank everyone, and I'm really excited for what 19V sort of goes on to do, whether it stays sort of largely in this form or some kind of hybrid form. Either way, I look forward to participating as much as possible. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Christy. I will pass the word now to Christine Ran.
Okay, thank you. I will be as brief as I can, because I'm sure there's lots of other people who have ideas and thoughts. But I wanted to say that before the pandemic, I was an active participant in 2 groups of Russian historians that met over the years. One of them was the Midwest Russian Historians Workshop, which meant twice in an academic year. And then now it's the Georgetown Russian History Seminar, which meets more or less once a month during the academic year. So I already knew about the joys of this kind of collective work that we would do together. But in that case, it was focused primarily on history. I mean, these were history groups, and eventually it became more and more Soviet. So when I decided to participate in 19V, I was excited because the focus was no longer disciplinary, it was Russia. And I was curious to see how things would evolve if you bring together literary scholars, art historians, and historians. So that same joy has been there during all of this, and certainly, as everybody's pointed out, an academic and intellectual lifesaver. And I think it's also the way in which these groups create community that was not there before. And it's those intangibles. Now, in our case, we were able to meet each other and, you know, have dinner together afterwards and this sort of thing, which we have not been able to do. But despite that, I feel a sense of community. I do want to see everybody in person and say, hey, great to see you, and, you know, make a kind of human connection with these people who I've been with all this time. But as Christy just said, I think that there are some people who are missing, and I would like to think that more historians would become involved. I'm not sure why that didn't happen at the very beginning. I think it's because it appeared as though it was a literature group, and only people silly enough like me to want to, you know, think about things differently participated. But I think historians should become more involved. I think we would have some good things to say and to participate in terms of subgroups and things like that. And I'm not sure why that didn't happen, but I think that's something that could improve the situation. But I do think it is absolutely imperative that we continue to meet however it shakes out after the pandemic is over, because I, for one, am really, really worried about Russian studies in the United States. I'll just be flat out and say that. I know so many people like myself who, when they retire, are not replaced. I know programs that have been abolished, just like you must all. And I think anything that we do to enhance our sense of ourselves as a community of scholars and intellectuals, but also to encourage the study of Russia in the United States is so valuable. And I think there are ways in which we can do that and make that, make ourselves more prominent. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Christine. I now am opening it up to kind of free discussion, and I already have a couple of people in line. So the first person, we have Margarita Weissman.
Great. Whom have you given my voice to? Thank you very much, Ilya, and thank you very much, Anne, for inviting me to say a few words. I'd be very brief. Just as everyone, I'd like to say thank you. It's been a great joy to join you from the other side of the pond and kind of represent the UK Slavic Studies here with a few other people. And I think that's one of the things that has generally been missing for me ever since I settled here, because it seems that being in the UK, we're almost even further away from the American Slavic Studies than people are in Russia, because there aren't that many formal really agreements between us on the institutional level. So there's just one thing that I wanted to say, and that's I have really appreciated the kind of the networking aspect of this in the very practical sense. And I thought that one of the things, and Anne and I have talked about it a little bit, one of the things that we could do is have one of those shared documents that we could use to just alert members of 19V about various funding opportunities that come up in our respective fields, because I know that things are very different in different countries. But one thing that I can say about the UK academic context is that although these are difficult times, for those of us who are in a privileged position of having a permanent job and being a member of a rich institution, there is a lot of money floating around. And there is a lot of money floating around that's specifically earmarked for transnational corporations, whether they're 19th century or whether they're kind of more disciplinary within history or within the history of literature. And I certainly know of quite a lot of those, and some of these are, you know, they have a job creating potential. These are funding calls that asked us to pitch projects that would include a postdoc or an early career researcher or a PhD scholarships. And, you know, I know of a few of those, and I'm sure those of you among us today know about a few more. So I think kind of creating a very, very practical Google Doc or an Excel sheet, no, maybe not an Excel sheet, everyone hates those, including me. I think that would be really helpful, and I think that could lead us potentially to some job creation and funding call applications that would be a very tangible outcome of our discussions. So that's just a very practical note for me, and thank you very much everyone, particularly Anne, Ilya, Sasha and Sarah, for all of your effort in this. It has been, and Helen as well, for the minority group that I've attended. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Margarita. Kirill Zubkov is next one. I'm going to be a little bit rushing it along because there's a very, very long line already. So that's wonderful. Kirill, let me see if I need to unmute you. No.
Yes, you already have done it. Thank you, everybody, and I'm very thankful to the organizers of our great 19V group. I'm going to tell a couple of things about disproportion of Russian-speaking and English-speaking contributors that we are discussing in the chat. So I think it's clearly obvious that, well, it's a great group, yes, and it's extremely useful for everybody. But so far, it seems to be more useful for English speakers than to Russian. So, and I think it's, well, and mostly it's, well, if you're looking for someone to blame for this, it's, for example, me, and because as a Russian speaker, I should have tried to invite more Russian scholars to the group. But next year, I mean next academic year, I'm going to try doing this, and I'm going to invite more Russian-speaking scholars to our group. So, what I will try to do for that is I'm going to organize a seminar based in Pushkinsky Dom, the Institute of Russian Literature in St. Petersburg. That is going to be about institutional history of Russian literature of 19th century. And we are going to discuss such problems as media. I mean, what's the difference between texts published in thick journals, in newspapers, or staged on theater, and other kinds of texts. And we're going to discuss the contribution of institutions, I mean, including negative contributions of institutions such as censorship, literary prizes, literary criticism, and so on and so on and so on. And I would, well, the seminar is probably going to be mostly in Russian, but I think that everybody knows English enough to at least understand and participate in discussion if somebody is going to speak in English. And what's more is that we would be extremely interested in participants who are not just philologists and historians of Russian literature, because when we're discussing such things as, for example, media in Russian 19th century, of course, we would need specialists in journalism and in media studies. And if we're going to discuss censorship, of course, we would need specialists in history and political and social history of the Russian Empire. So I think we are going to start our seminar in September, and I would like to use this opportunity to invite everybody to participate. So I think I will be able to organize some kind of public announcement about our seminar, but if somebody is interested, please let me know, and I would be very glad to let you know about our meetings. So, and once again, I'd like to express my gratitude to everybody who organized these meetings and all the previous meetings that I have participated in, and those that I have not participated in. Because, yes, because well, the pandemic is of course terrible, but well, those Zoom meetings are new opportunities, and we are using them. And actually, it's much better to use them than to not use them. So I think even in this terrible situation, we managed to do something good. It's great. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much, Kirill. That's what a fantastic initiative. I'm getting in line for that. Lindsay, would you like to say a couple of words as well? Let me unmute you. Okay, there you go.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ilya. Thanks to all the organizers. Again, I echo what people have said. This has been fabulous. Thank you to Jenny. I was in the Turgenev reading group and I really loved it. And it made me feel like it was doable to start my own group with Chloe Kitzinger, which we're going to do in a preliminary way. And it's going to be called the Symbolist 19V. So we're working at the very end of the 19th century, and we're reading literary criticism. So for anyone who's interested in symbolist criticism on a variety of writers, we're probably going to be starting with, the big ones right away. But if you're interested in that, if you're interested in history of ideas, if you're interested just in the history of literary criticism in general in Russia, please join us. We're going to be starting, our first meeting is going to be the week of July 5th. And we're meeting soon to finalize the list of readings. You can email me. My email is on the site where all the reading groups are listed. Email me and, oh, thank you. Yeah, Chloe. Chloe just sent my email to you all. And I just wanted to plug that and hope you come check us out. We're only meeting very briefly to begin with, but we're excited to get started. Chloe's here if Chloe wants to say something.
Oh, thanks, Leah. No, very little to add, just we would love to have you. We're envisioning something pretty broad-ranging, but just to look at how the beginning of the 20th century looked back at the 19th, and we would very much welcome suggestions, ideas. Please email Lindsay if you'd like to work with us.
That's really great. Thank you both. I have Shama Shahadat next, and I will unmute.
Okay, thank you. In order to thank you that I can participate in the group, I'd like to say some words from a personal perspective, because I came to the Jordan Center on March 1st last year and was supposed to stay for a month, but of course I didn't last a month, as you can imagine, and I hardly managed to say hello to some people from the Jordan Center before I had to leave again, because of Corona, of course. And so the 19V working group is some kind of substitute for my stay at the Jordan Center. And even though I couldn't join all the meetings, the group has become something like an intimate academic circle for me, although 50 to 60 people isn't so intimate anymore. But apart from everything that has been said, that it's great, that it's interdisciplinary, or that we can see and listen to people we have read, but who we have never met in person. It's also, I think, a great chance for a trans-Atlantic discourse on Russian culture. And you were talking about the financial situation. And in Germany, actually, even though we have fewer students, the Slavic seminars aren't closed down, and our funding isn't bad. And we often have opportunities for graduate students or postdocs or professors for funding, project funding. Our university, for example, has something called Teach at Tübingen, which is a grant for a semester or two, or Humboldt Foundation, whatever. So it would be great to have a platform to announce these possibilities. I would like to do this. And also, I would like very quickly to talk about a topic which I find interesting. I would like to go back to one of the early sessions. It was the launch of the 19B series in June last year. And one of the panelists, Alexander Martin, asked a very central question. He asked, what is the 19th century? And he argued that the Russian 19V is very different from the Western European one. And he put forward the radical idea that either Russia doesn't have a 19th century, or we have to talk about the coexistence of different eras. I hope I quote that correctly. So he said that in Russia, side by side, we find the old regime and modern ideas side by side, more than in the West, where one regime replaces the other. And that's a question that has been haunting me, also because I myself am interested in times and beginnings and endings. And I think, I would suggest to think about this question once again. What about the Russian V? What is the Russian 19th century? And well, that's it. And thank you, everybody, of course. I'm very much enjoying being part of this group.
Thank you very much, Emma. Next on my list is Chao Henrique Duarte.
Hello, Ilya, thank you. So my group is the Law and Diplomacy one. We haven't been meeting because we've run into some difficulties. So we haven't given up on the idea, and we are trying to rethink the format because there isn't enough people for regular discussions, but we still believe it's enough people for seminars. So we are very much open to suggestions and ideas on how to reach out to people. As you might have guessed from my name, I am the one from Latin America here. So there are some associations that we do not know about. We've been reaching out to the traditional channels in Russia, but in the English-speaking world, we would really much appreciate the help in reaching out to those associations or just showing us the path, because we do have a direct link to Russia, but not to the other academia. So some ideas are very much welcome. And just to make Anne happy, because she has clinged on to this from the last meeting that we had. I am sending greetings from the South. I just hope that you don't ask how things are going here, because they're not going well. But it's glad to be able to see you all again. And we hope to maybe this year try to get the group off the ground, because it's a very interesting subject. Some people wanted to hear more about history, and we would really much look forward to talk about it, either law and diplomacy or maybe changing the scope of the group. So that's it from me, and thank you once again for the opportunity. We have not given up yet, Ilya. We are still hanging on.
That's great to hear. Thank you. Okay, I have Kirill Spavat.
Yes, thank you, Ilya. Thank you to all of the organizers. Thank you to Sarah, to Anne, to Sasha, of course. And just kind of echoing Anne's initial remarks, I wanted to mention a project that we are starting, which is also inspired by the 19V idea, but also some of the political implications which Anne began. And this is a project which has already been circulated. It's called The Humiliated and the Insulted, Representing the Disenfranchised in 19th Century Russia. And everyone's welcome to join. A lot of you already have, so thank you for that. I just thought it would be an appropriate kind of moment to actually say some of those things out loud. So the idea of the project is that before the pandemic, when we still could meet in person, there was a sense that a lot of people working on 19th century Russian literature specifically were interested in how it represents social issues, right? Inequality, economics, serfdom, prostitution, a lot of those things that a lot of people are working on. And so the idea behind this project that we developed together with Alexey Evstratov and Colleen Lucy, who's writing and who's given a talk in the 19V, was that it would be great to develop a forum where we could have those conversations in an organized but also democratic and horizontal way. So we hope that at the end of the project, it will be a volume, and we have a particular time frame in mind. We hope to be done in maybe 2 years. But before that happens, the idea that we will really we'll start by online meetings, start by discussions where everyone will have a voice, and a lot of decisions about the outcome of our work will be kind of taken democratically and decided on collectively. But also the important part of this project is before we start discussing our specific topics, right? Individual topics, we will actually have a organized, well-thought conversation about the kind of approaches and method that we use. And that would involve actually discussing a lot of theory and social history, a lot of things that are relevant for our writings, but are outside of the immediate field of 19th century Russian literature. So things that need to be brought in so that our understanding of how we can connect the social issues of 19th century Russian literature, which are absolutely central, right? That's the basic fact that we are working with, that it's first and foremost 19th century classical Russian literature is about social issues, right? What kind of theory we need to and methods we need to bring in and to develop to make this connection to the political concerns of our time valid and solid, and to think it through, right? And so everyone's welcome to join, and I hope that you've already had the presentation, received the email. Contact me if you don't. I'm gonna post my email in the chat. And thanks again for 19V for being this inspiring space where all of those ideas can be developed.
Yes, our rhizome or our Soyuz Sovetov. I don't know which one it is, but quite. Okay, great. Thank you, Kirill. So if we are kind of approaching our end time, I think, and unless anybody has quick points they would like to make, I will ask Anne to say some concluding words.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. This was even richer than I had expected, and I expected it to be rich. So my gratitude to everyone who's contributed to 19V this year. I also wanted to recognize someone has done a great deal of work and has not been recognized yet today, and that's Ilya Krieger, who's here managing the stressful chat situation. And also Ilya is the person to whose office I run if I'm annoyed or panicky or I don't understand some word that I'm reading. So thank you very much. Ilya has also proven to be a bridge between the Russian and non-Russian academic communities. And one of my goals for 19V for the coming year, as we've been speaking about, is more collaboration with our colleagues in Russia, as well as our colleagues in Europe and elsewhere and in the South. So this has been great. I really, really appreciate everyone's input. Looking forward to the summer seminar series in a little bit less intensive schedule, but still ongoing. And thank you all so much. It's been really great. Спасибо всем. До свидания.